And welcome to session 5, where we'll be thinking about the vicious circle of anxiety. You might want to grab a pen and paper, as we'll be thinking about things that feed into our anxiety. At its worst, anxious thoughts and feelings can feed into each other into a vicious cycle, or a spiral of increasing anxiety, and eventually could also lead to panic. Sometimes this process happens so quickly that the first feeling you're aware of is one of total panic. It may start with a certain trigger for fear. You might see something that sparks an anxiety response in you. And then you may have certain beliefs about your ability to cope, or that you might end up in a panic attack. This thought or belief can evoke certain physiological responses. So you may kind of notice your heart racing, you may notice that you sweat, you're shaking. And of course, our appraisal of these symptoms that are going on in our body may want us to think about responding in a certain way. So whether that's escaping the situation, avoiding certain situations, avoiding people, we will try and do whatever we can to keep ourselves safe and away from this thing that triggers this anxiety. So what sort of situations will trigger your anxiety? And this is where it might be quite helpful to grab your pen and paper and to have a think about the triggering situations. So you may learn to associate a particular situation with feelings of panic or anxiety and become anxious whenever you go into that situation, or even just think about going into it, because it reminds you of previous attacks of anxiety. Even small cues like the sound of a telephone ringing or seeing somebody on television in a place where you get anxious can be enough to set off the body's anxiety response. And remember, it's really important to know that anxiety is normal. We all have anxiety. Our anxiety comes out in different ways, but it is a normal human response when we particularly feel quite fearful of things. So you might want to make a note of what sort of situations, places, or what sort of cues kind of evoke a feeling of anxiety for you. Just take a moment to make a list of that now. Okay, so I hope you've got some idea in terms of the situations that might trigger anxiety for you. Now, if we move on to some of the kind of unhelpful things that people might do in a way to combat their feelings of anxiety. But actually, some of these things can actually increase the level of arousal and make them feel even more tense or panicky. So, for example, before going out, they might rush around busying themselves, or people might leave things to the last minute. People may develop certain safety behaviours that can also serve to maintain the anxiety. For example, people may rely on having to carry their mobile phone around with them wherever they go, or wearing dark glasses to avoid eye contact, or always wearing a coat even indoors. Nervous habits may also increase, such as smoking or drinking. Now, I wonder whether we can have a think about you and the sort of things that you might do, that might increase or maintain your anxieties. Maybe think about strategies that would be helpful in the short term for you and that can alleviate some of that anxiety initially, but actually may not be so helpful in the long run. So it's important for our recovery to recognise, develop and use our support networks around us. An issue may be that people around us are unsupportive and critical, this attitude that we should pull ourselves together and just get on with it. And this can raise anxiety levels. Alternatively, there may be people who are willing to support us, but we may need to step through thoughts that we are alone, no one likes us, we are unworthy, no one wants to know. These sort of self-critical thoughts that can prevent us accessing our support networks to the best and the fullest opportunity. Often friends and relatives are very kind and supportive, but sometimes they can be too kind and take over and try and relieve the anxious person of some of their domestic responsibilities, particularly if they know how much the anxiety is overwhelming. So, for example, they might do someone's shopping for them, or they might run basic errands for them, rather than exposing them to a situation and helping them tolerate a certain level of anxiety. And whereas this can be very, very helpful and valuable in times, particularly in a true crisis, it can sometimes lead to dependence and prevents us from relearning that we are able to cope, the situations are safe, and anxiety is a normal response. When doing the steps, it may be appropriate to ask for someone to be around, or it could be that we are too reliant on others. So it may be that your family member goes with you to the shopping centre, supports you going to the counter and buying something, and then the next step might be that they go to the shopping centre but wait outside for you while you go into the shop and buy something for yourself. It might be worth you having a think about things that other people do for you that may increase or maintain your anxiety. So I hope you found session 5 helpful today, and these sort of things you can return to, add to. It's a way in which you can increase self-awareness and self-monitoring and really take charge of your own recovery. Thank you.